Hey, what's up guys? So today I'm going to do a quick review about this Nikon 50mm 1.8G lens. And some of you guys might remember that one of my earliest videos on YouTube was a comparison of three different Nikon 50mm. And this lens got added in as an honorable mention because I'd used it just one time for a couple minutes at a friend's house. Anyway, I ended up getting one of these just sort of to test it out to make sure that a D810 that I bought was working properly, and I didn't have another lens with me, so I decided to go with this lens and figure that I would resell it later on. And so I actually enjoyed using the lens quite a bit, and I wanted to go ahead and do its own separate review here today. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention is that this lens does have a good close-up focus range, and so that really helps out a lot. There's only a few lenses that have a longer focal distance, like the E series lens comparatively. So this lens is basically the same as the AIS version, and so I haven't really used the 1.8G to compare it against, so I can't really go into detail on that. And in this example here, you can see that I was able to focus pretty close on this grass. This was taken late at night in overhead street lighting. It was basically dark at this point, but I took this for fun. In that you can see that you can get it up pretty close. In this one here, same thing here, I was able to get in pretty close. This of course was shot at 1.4, so of course I knew that it was going to blur out quite a bit. I wasn't going to get everything in focus, but basically I just wanted to show that you can get pretty close. Now, when I borrowed this lens from my buddy at his house there a lot of years ago, I did take a couple pictures of his cats. Those were both tested at 1.4. It was pretty dark in his apartment. This is one of them, and also this boy here. And so the lens has a really good render, I think, to it, as far as the out of focus areas look really good. Me personally, the thing about it for me is that I take 50, 1.4, or 1.8 out when I want something that my normal lens can't provide, like my normal zoom range lens. So, basically I take this lens out whenever I want a faster, wider aperture. Or, if it's really low light, I might consider it then, just for the same reason that I could, open up the aperture a little bit, get some more light into the camera, that sort of thing. However, this was shot at f8, and it gives you an idea of the type of resolution and detail that you can get when you do stop the lens down. It actually worked out pretty well for these for these product photography shots of my D810. And here's a photo shot at f2.2. Usually if I have enough light, I do like to stop it down a little bit. It gets a little more sharpness, and it also increases the chances that you're going to get an image to be in focus. So I took this one at f2.2 of my daughter running toward me. The autofocus seemed to work pretty well. These shots are generally done on a mix of the D810 or the Z6II that I'm recording this video on. And by the way, I am recording this video with the 50mm that we're talking about in the video. So here's an image of my daughter shot at f1.4. This really shows just how thin the depth of field really is, and how much of the background just goes to a blur when shooting with this lens. And you can see that her nose, her mouth, none of that's in focus. Really just her eyes only. So it can be very difficult. You will miss a lot of shots when you try to shoot like that. And here's another portrait of her shot at f2. Like I said, I usually do try to stop it down a little bit. Not only does it improve image quality, it just makes life a lot easier trying to acquire focus and that sort of thing. Now here's a portrait shot at f2.8, and as you can see, you still get a nice render on the background there at f2.8. It does let a good bit of light in, and everything looks pretty good here in my opinion. Now the biggest comparison that I really have is my AIS 1.4 version of this lens, and the AIS has a more artistic rendering. This one is a little more practical, much easier to use as far as if you want a more normal portrait type look. versus the artistic sort of render of the old lens. And then also, of course, the autofocus makes a big difference, especially when shooting at really wide apertures. Of course, I will say that the Z6 II makes this a whole lot easier as well because of the focus peaking feature. And also, I do have a little bit of a problem with my eyesight, and it tends to be that when I use glasses, especially here in Peru, anywhere it's hot and humid, the glasses fog up, as soon as I put the camera up to my eye, for example. So it makes it pretty difficult, whereas whenever you have the ability to use the live view screen effectively, that really helps out. You can sort of get to an area where your eyes can focus, and then you can actually see what you're doing. So that may make a difference for some of you guys as well. Now here's a photo of my ugly face shot at f2. I believe that I actually did add a little bit of vignette back into this photo. And here's another portrait from my dad's backyard, shot at f2.2, and basically using the same settings I took a couple of the other portraits in. And just, that's basically how I usually use the lens. Now, one thing that this lens is probably very good for, that I don't really have photo examples for, and I don't see myself getting out and shooting anytime soon, is basically like environmental portraits or street photography or something like that, where you would probably be shooting more like f5.6, f8. I don't get a chance to get out and do that kind of photography very often here, especially here in Peru. However, if you're looking for that type of work, you probably want to go ahead and watch another video by another reviewer and see if that type of work looks good on your camera. I really just don't have many photo examples like that. However, here's basically, I'm going to go ahead and just play a slideshow of the images that I shot with this lens, and hopefully it'll help some of you guys. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'm sure as I own this lens a little bit longer, I will probably take more narrow aperture shots. So if you get any questions, feel free to hit me up on those. And take care, guys. you.